Well, Nils, thanks for being on. I want to start with this question. What is the most annoying thing that you see on social media these days?
Oh, I mean, my immediate thought is politics. Is everyone has their own platform and they have their
Yep.
opinions, and I have mine, and I choose not to share mine on social media, but you definitely have those that share their opinions, and it's so hard not to get pulled into the
Yeah.
the comment thread of debate in that realm, and so
Yeah.
that side of things definitely is what first comes to mind.
Which will be fun because I do have a politics question for you coming up
Yeah,
in a little bit.
yeah.
So,
And I do love politics. I just, I've seen enough
right.
go wrong in those conversations.
Well,
So,
when we get to it, I'll try to get neither of us
yeah,
in trouble.
yeah.
So, I guess content wise, politics makes total sense. I'm wondering if there's anything that people do. Is there any I don't know, like practices, like when people post these type of posts or these type of things, maybe things that you're like, too many people do this. Let's do
Yeah,
something else. I know part of this is time specific. We're recording this end of
yeah,
August 2024, so that can change.
yeah.
But is there anything else that's like when people do this? I'm like, why do you do that?
I think, where my pet peeve is a guy who gets people to use social media is the number of people who overthink social media and
Mm.
don't post anything.
Yeah,
I would rather, see people just put their lives, out there when I think it's meaningful. And I think a lot of people are holding back because they don't want to
yeah,
look like something, they don't want to, perceive. Even as I'm thinking about it though, it's negativity. There's a lot of people that
yeah,
just get on social media just to like the only time they ever post anything is complaining about a bad
mm,
restaurant, a bad experience, and and I think sometimes it's good to help other people avoid
right.
your mistakes, but some people just overdo the Debbie Downer on
That's
social
right,
media, and I just it's not. I like to get on social media in some ways for the funny, the personal,
right.
the thoughtful. And when you see a lot of negativity, that's a quick kind of unfollow
Yeah.
on my end.
So I have some thoughts about negativity. I do have this question for you though. Do you think a certain platforms are more negative than others, or do you think they're about the same?
No, I mean, I would say Instagram is probably one of the more positive
Mm,
platforms that I see out there, and a lot of it because it's so photo, video driven.
right.
It's almost harder to post, the negative. Where I feel like, I'm kind of torn between Facebook and X as the two platforms, or Twitter, as most of
Right.
us know it, as the places that negativity goes. Now, X is often a platform for sports and politics and news, and so even if you watch the news on TV, a lot of it is just negative
Yeah.
news, and some of it is kind of get your attention kind of stuff. But Facebook, I think, is where a lot of people personally,
Yeah.
and I would probably categorize my parents' generation as
Yep.
those that often go on there and just complain about the world on Facebook. But I
Yeah.
see it multi-generational when it comes to negativity and complaining.
Yeah.
So I think probably between Facebook and X is where you see the most negativity.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the platforms that are more text based, so you can
Yes.
write your complaints.
Yep.
I thought it was
Yep.
funny. You can correct me if you think I'm wrong on this. When Threads came out earlier this year, I think it was earlier this year,
Yep.
and everyone's like, "It's going to be amazing. Twitter's so
Yes.
negative," and I'm like, "Humans are humans." So
Yes.
I don't now. I'm not on Threads a lot, so maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong on
Same.
this. But I'm like, I feel like people are gonna act the same no matter what the
Yes.
platform is.
and,
So
and and I
I don't
think
know.
I think you're right though. It is that ability to text, in
Yeah,
some ways, because you can be less thoughtful with that. When you're creating a graphic or a video, you've got to record it. You've got to then potentially edit it or upload it. It requires a little bit more thought.
yeah,
Where when you're being negative, you're often not putting a lot of thought. You're emotional in a moment, and you're like, I got to vent, and so I'm going to just
yeah.
type it out. So I think that text only option is what opens up that ability there.
Yeah. So, negative. Maybe the positive. What is your favorite? Maybe you get a multiple, but if they get to choose one,
Yeah,
what's your favorite to use?
TikTok is really probably
Okay.
where when I get on to where I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna kill time and just get on, and because one of the things I love about TikTok is I think a lot of people still have a perception that TikTok is just teenage girls doing
Mm,
dances, and it's
yeah.
goofy stuff. But the reality is maybe that's the case the first 5 minutes you get on there, but then it learns you. And so it feeds me sports highlights. It feeds me,
Yeah.
just I get a lot of pastors in my feed and their, sermon clips and their, I get, things that are meaningful to me. And so because it's so fed to what I engage with and like, I just find it to be the most enjoyable. I would say YouTube is probably the other one that I spend the most time on. Yeah. But yeah, those are the two that I'm definitely most engaged on.
So speaking of engagement, I've got like a practical question. We're going to talk about some practical things. This podcast, the Dylan Dodson Show that you're doing is brand new. So I personally you've done a newsletter, The Best Minute. Probably many people that are listening to this are familiar with that. And so recently, along with this podcast, I'm starting to do more vertical videos, and I'm posting them. I'll ask this question in a second, but I'm posting them on like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and not really Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Yep. And it's the same video. It's like 60-ish seconds. Yep. Although if it's over 60 seconds, I can't do YouTube Shorts. And it's interesting to me the different amount of what they call views. Now, I don't know how they're counting them. Yep. But what I've noticed in the few weeks that I've been doing this more intentionally is like TikTok. Well, I would say TikTok and YouTube Shorts. And I would say this is true for New City Church where I lead too, because we post a lot of videos, seem to get way more engagement than Reels and the Facebook, whatever they call them, version of it. Now, part of it, I was wondering if it's like, maybe it's because when I'm on Instagram, I'm not just scrolling, like you're looking at posts, whatever. I don't know what your thoughts on. I know it's hard to know like what they count. Yes. But when it comes to maybe vertical videos, like what is I don't know, where gets the most reach?
Yeah, right now, what I'm seeing is YouTube, because YouTube is, one, they have the most attention of any platform. The average American spending more than an hour a day on YouTube, and YouTube is prioritizing the basically short form video in their feed more significantly, especially in the mobile experience. Right. And so YouTube, and there's less people using it, where TikTok, that's all it is, and people are there. And so because YouTube is prioritizing it, it's getting the best engagement right now. Now that could change a month from now, a day from now. Things are always changing on social media. Instagram, is a platform that still has a lot of attention. I think there's, a couple billion users on Instagram. And I think that, the last stats I saw was about 30 minutes a day is the average time on site. But I one of the things I heard recently from the CEO of Instagram, or whatever title they have for the head of Instagram within Meta's world, is that the number one feature used on Instagram, as they really dug in, they have tried to prioritize Reels to compete with TikTok as TikTok kind of exploded. But it's DMs. DMs is what gets the most engagement on Instagram. And I think what happens is actually there's so much, it's so easy to share post from your friends to the DMs. And so instead of letting the algorithm decide what we watch, we actually let our friends decide what we watch. And we go first to our DMs, watch those videos that our friend shared with us. And then they said the second feature is stories. And so stories has kind of become a bit of an afterthought as they copied Snapchat and brought that in. Right. But it became such a popular feature of Instagram. Well, they have tried to force Reels, but it hasn't had the same level of engagement as TikTok. And so I think people just perceive it to be one more thing in TikTok. And if I want to watch this, I'll go to TikTok. Right. But I think people still see Instagram as a photo app in the feed. And then they watch the stories, or they go to the DMs. And so it's kind of cluttered within the app itself. And so, I'm with you I definitely have, and encourage my clients, create that short form vertical video, put it on Instagram Reels, put it on Facebook Reels, put it on YouTube Shorts, put it on TikTok. But what I'm seeing in that mass distribution, actually LinkedIn just this week opened up their own video platform, which is their own TikTok version. Nice. And so you're seeing it, that function, being a part of every social network now. But on Instagram, it definitely doesn't get that same level of engagement unless you already had a more significant following on Instagram compared to other platforms. But it is interesting that that's the case, because Instagram does have so much popularity and attention from a broad audience. Yeah.
So speaking of Instagram, and you mentioned stories. Yeah. I've got a question for social media expert like yourself. Sometimes like Reels versus stories. So obviously if you do a Reel, it's searchable and doesn't go away in 24 hours. Yep. But when you do a story, if people watch your story a lot, your followers may be more likely to see your story than your Reel. Yeah. So sometimes I'm like, is it better to post a Reel or to post it on a story? Yes. To do both? or to do the thing where you post a reel and then you repost your reel on your story, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like what do you do there?
That's a good question. I think it's one, we don't see great engagement when you repost reels to your stories when it comes to people actually then going from the story to the reel. So if people are watching stories, they want to engage right there in the story. The other reason we often push our clients to use stories is because you can actually put links in the stories. You can make them interactive, where the reels are not necessarily interactive. They're more just things people watch and then swipe through. And so, I think, there's a place for both, and it's hard to define. And I think it's part of the struggle, even for Instagram, of like, which is, the other. I do think, though, there is an urgency factor to watching stories of, I need to go in every day and watch these stories because they'll go away. Well, the reality is with reels, they end up kind of going away anyway after 24 hours because they're not in the algorithm anymore. Yeah. And so, but I think there's not an urgency to watch them. Right. So the user behavior, I think, is driven to stories because of that urgency factor. Yeah. But it's, I think it's hit or miss. I find that with my content and my clients' content is that they get about the same level of engagement, or typically like views, if you look at like impressions on stories too. But sometimes reels will pop, where stories are pretty steady. You're going to always get, if you get 300 views on your stories, it's probably always going to be right around that. And so it's a bit give or take, where you want to prioritize that, but it doesn't, the differentiating the two is challenging. And I think some of it is just even length of a video. If it's going to be 20 seconds or less, stories is a great fit for it. If it's going to be 20 seconds to a minute and a half, reels is a good platform for it. So that's kind of how I decide between the two.
Yeah. Also curious, thinking about best practices, I felt like years ago it was not best to post the same thing on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Those are the big ones years ago. Yeah. So it's like you want to, otherwise it's like, what's the point of following you? All of them follow the same.
Yes.
Now, with all of the vertical videos that are really out, you don't even see everyone that you follow. You don't even see all their posts anymore. Yep. Am I right or wrong what I've currently been doing to post the same vertical video on all these platforms?
Yeah. Man, it's what I love about my job in social media, is because it's always changing. And I remember, probably 5 years ago telling my clients, like, look, we got to have a different strategy for Facebook than Instagram, than Twitter. And now it's kind of going back to, because really when I started, it was almost all text based, and then graphics became a big thing. Yep. And we used Hootsuite, and we would post one thing and then we would basically distribute it everywhere through Hootsuite. Well, then Hootsuite became, or platforms like that became, less valuable because you wanted to start really creating unique content for each platform, not posting the same thing everywhere. Well, now with short form vertical video being such a craze across all the platforms, it is kind of back to those Hootsuite days of the best ROI that I continue to see for the organizations that I work with is posting vertical video, because they can create one piece of content, post it to 5 platforms that are all really prioritizing that medium, and get the best engagement, versus if you create a tweet, you could really only use that on Twitter and Facebook, and then, it's funny too. We a lot of our clients do the screenshotted tweets, and post that on Instagram. And it's funny, they'll often get 10 times the engagement with a screenshot than they do on Instagram than they do of the tweet itself. And then, I'll tell you one of the practices that some of our clients use that's interesting is, because of the way just X is laid out, they will tweet like 10 things, on X. They'll see which one performs best, and then they'll create a reel based on the performance of those tweets. So they'll almost use like X as like a testing ground, and then they'll utilize that to then create content for their other platforms. But it's always changing and evolving, and I expect X to integrate. I'm shocked they haven't yet brought Vine back, or brought their own version of TikTok into the X platform. It feels like they're actually trying to compete with YouTube more than TikTok, and I just don't think that's the play for a platform that is so mobile centric as X is.
Yeah. So one of the hard things, someone's listening to this, maybe they're a content creator, they want to maybe start posting whatever. There's all these social media platforms where they got a business. Like,
Yep.
what do I do? Where do I start?
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you recommend? If someone, their business or something they're trying to sell, grow, or whatever,
Yep.
and they want to use online, seems overwhelming. How do you start?
Yeah, well, my personal recommendation to almost everyone is YouTube. I think YouTube is the platform that if you can start creating video content, you can take, just like you're going to do with this podcast, clips of this podcast, and you can post that to Instagram, and it creates content for your other platforms. And YouTube is the platform that, my daughter was just here in my office earlier. We made a video, like, it's probably 6 years ago, of how my 9-year-old started a YouTube channel together. And that is, I still get about 100 views a day on that video. I was showing her the AdSense of like, Emery, you just made me another $1 yesterday. Like that video just makes $1 a day, being on YouTube, and it's reaching tons of new people from 6 years ago. And my Instagram post from 6 years ago, nobody will ever see again. And so as you're looking to kind of build an audience, YouTube will bring audience to you, I believe, better than any other platform, and will have the effects of your content that you're creating can have, residual impact and effect and build on itself, I think, more significantly than any other platform. So YouTube, I believe, is the biggest opportunity. It's also the one that I anticipate to be around the longest. I mean, I think Facebook is really dwindling. Instagram is flatlined. TikTok might not exist, by the end of the year in America. And so there's so many questions, I think, and X, I think, has its own questions that I think YouTube is the platform that it's like, I think we all can agree, like, this isn't going to go like, there's no competition even for YouTube. Very different than the other platforms. But I believe YouTube is the biggest, probably current and near future opportunity to build a brand on.
Yeah. So YouTube makes me think of Instagram a little bit. We talk about how the struggle with Instagram is you have reels, stories, and posts. So it's like, like which one do you do? YouTube, I mean, I know shorts, the vertical videos are taken off, but you can do vertical video, or you can do,
horizontal. Yeah. Yep.
And like, but how they show up on your homepage of your YouTube thing is different.
Yes.
So like I'll use like New City, for example. We've got like our sermons. Obviously those are long form, and we'll take, a sermon clip and make it a short.
Yeah.
We also do something called Bible in a Minute, where every week it's like about a minute long, and we just do those as shorts.
Yep.
But it's like, but when you do them as shorts, it doesn't look. It's just weird. It's like, how do you know when you should do horizontal video or vertical video, or should you all go in just on one type? Like,
yeah, I think, I mean, I think even though vertical video is the trend right now and is what's being prioritized, I still think horizontal video is where you're going to get the best long-term engagement. And I find the algorithm on YouTube Shorts to be actually more similar to Instagram, where my shorts will only get engagement for about 24 or 36 hours, but my long-form videos will get engagement for as long as people are still watching it. And so the engagement time is shorter with shorts. And so I think primarily I would start with and focus on horizontal video. And then I would expand to shorts, whether that's clipping your horizontal videos or doing what you're doing, like with the daily devotional, where it's dedicated short form video and adding that into your flow. But I would start with and I always say, like, once a week, post, or if you do more than that, but one video a week to that platform. And this is where churches are such a natural fit for a platform like YouTube, because you've got the sermon every week that you can post as a long form video, but then you've got clips, you've got devotionals, you've got other pieces of content that you can add as shorts. YouTube also has a pretty underutilized feature called the community tab, which is basically you can post like your Facebook post and graphics and text-based post. Doesn't get great engagement at this point, but I do think that's a part of that YouTube, just even community opportunity to engage that audience. So you have a lot of opportunities to engage. What YouTube doesn't have that they used to have, and they took it away, are DMs. And so it does surprise me that they haven't brought more of that social side with DMs into their platform for better, just direct communication and engagement with creators. But that's probably the one feature that I've been curious about with YouTube if they're going to bring it in the future.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting to me about YouTube, I've read like a YouTube subscriber is like the most valuable type of subscriber. Like I've had like people who like really popped off on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
They eventually say, "Go to my YouTube channel," because that's where
Yes.
you want subscribers. What's interesting to me is maybe I don't know. Tell me if you like this. I don't subscribe to YouTube channels. When
Yeah.
I go on YouTube, I like just type. Maybe I need to not be so old. I just like type in the. Now maybe it's because I don't spend a lot of time like on YouTube. Like I don't
Yeah.
do a lot of shorts, whatever.
Yep.
But if like I like, there's a couple of sports channels like I'll
Yep.
watch, but I like
Yep.
I don't subscribe to them. I just search them out.
Yep.
So I don't. Is that weird?
Well, I think and it's interesting even with YouTube. It's it used to be, I think, more about the subscribers, but it's
Yeah.
becoming more and more about your behavior, and it's called YouTube. I think
Yeah.
it's your feed is going to be different than my feed, and it's all based on what you've engaged in, and the stat that measures the most on YouTube for the algorithm is average view duration. So how long you watch what kind of content, and then it recommends other content either from that creator or others like them that other people watched a lot of from that. And so it will naturally just learn you. And I think what's fascinating is even watching I always love watching my kids and how do they interact with these platforms. And I'll ask them, how did you find that? Well, like, YouTube recommended it. And so it's like, and they trust YouTube's recommendation because YouTube knows them often better than what they search for, to go and find. And so it's really interesting how it's tracking our behavior and then feeding us other content like it. But what it will do is, and this is what's great, I think, for churches or other, creators, especially with long form video, people watched your whole sermon. What it's likely going to do when you upload the next one, the next time they're going to review, what did they watch the longest, in the past? Well, that person just uploaded a new piece of content. So we're going to put that first in their recommendations. And what they know is YouTube wants people to spend more time on the platform so they can serve them more ads. Right. And so the longer the video is that can keep people's attention, the more ads YouTube can serve them. So they're going to prioritize those in their algorithm. And so I think at the end of the day, this is where all of these platforms, followers and subscribers being less and less, because it's not like an email subscriber where you're going to show up in their inbox. And the question is whether you're in junk mail or not. But it's going to be an order of when those people sent you that email. With YouTube, it's going to be based on your viewing behavior way more than just who you subscribe to. And so that's really how that algorithm is shifting, moving away from subscribers. But I'm with you it is more valuable, even because of the attention you keep of like in a TikTok or, a reel, you've only got their attention for 30 seconds, 60 seconds. YouTube video, you might have their attention for 30 minutes. And so there's a lot more connection and engagement that's happening in the length of that video than a quick clip on Instagram Reels.
Yeah. So for you, I know it depends on the person and what they're trying to do. If you could only pick one social media platform, I'm guessing it's YouTube.
Yeah, that's one where I would spend the most time personally as a consumer, and it's also what I'd recommend for anybody that's jumping onto social media. If there's one platform you want to dominate and you could just do that platform exclusively, I think it's YouTube right now. Is where now a couple years ago I might have said Instagram. My wife does a travel agency work. Almost all of her business comes from Instagram. And she's done good engaging there, but and I think the DMs are an important aspect of how she's able to get people to engage and connect with her. So I do think there's some alternatives there. And that's, I think, one of the issues with YouTube is that you don't have that engagement opportunity like you do on Instagram and the DMs. But it's, I think it's, YouTube is where, when it comes to capturing people's attention and keeping it for the long term, I think YouTube is the place to invest.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and I guess the nice thing too is because video is everywhere, especially the vertical video. If we were to talk about like gear and setup, what are someone's like, maybe I want to start doing YouTube. Does that mean I have to, what's all the stuff I have to buy and do? Is my phone good enough, but not really? Like what? I don't know. Where do you start?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't have the new iPhone. I think I have like an iPhone 13 or something. And it's great. It's a really good camera. I've got a client And I was like, what kind of camera? I just assumed they were using a professional camera. What kind of camera are you using to capture that? It's a lady that she does about a 15 to 20-minute Bible study each week on YouTube. And she's like, yeah, I just use my iPhone and I just have a little plug-in microphone that clips right into it. And that, that phone and that camera actually have a microphone right here that I use. And so and those people that are just listening to it won't see it, but this little end clips right into the back of my iPhone. And then this is like a little microphone I can hold in my hand or clip on my shirt like a lapel mic. Yeah. And I got this for $15 off of Amazon. And so with your iPhone and with a little clip-on microphone, the audio, and I've recorded videos like in streets here in New York City, and you can hear it pretty clearly and pretty good. Then you can get even like a little mini tripod for like $5 on Amazon. And so there's just no restriction, I feel like, and that's HD high quality video and audio for the camera you've already got in your pocket.
Yeah, I guess anyone could Amazon like a little lapel mic for iPhone.
Yeah,
you use that for, because I know you do a lot of like videos inside.
Yeah.
Do you always use the lapel?
No, I do use the lapel, but I use a wired Rode. I think it's Rode, RODE, lapel mic, and then I use a Canon M50. So it's an older, mirrorless camera. I watch it. There's a channel called Think Media on YouTube that I get advice from, and it was the camera they recommended 4 years ago or so when I was buying a camera and the lens.
Say the one again. What is
it? So
Think
Media, and the camera is the Canon M50, and it's probably a $500, $600 camera, and I think I paid $200 for a lens. And so I've got about, and probably the microphone was $100. So it's under $1,000 for, the whole setup. And so that's what I use when I record most of my videos. And then I, in my home office, I record a lot of videos right here. I say my home office. I guess it's not. I no longer have a home office because we've got a smaller apartment. But I've got an office down the street from my home. But I've got a little webcam that I use with a teleprompter set up, and then I've got this Samsung, USB microphone that was probably $100 on Amazon, and the webcam was maybe $50, and that's So
you're saying
not that complicated.
Well, I got two questions. Mirrorless camera. So how do you know you're like in the shot?
And I say it's mirrorless. It means basically, so you've got kind of two in the professional camera. DSLR is what a lot of people know, which is it's a thicker body. Mirrorless means it doesn't have like a mirror in their lens system, so it's a thinner camera.
You can still like,
but it has a flip out screen where I can see myself. Okay. So I can see myself in the setup. Now the struggle I have, Dylan, is I struggle, and I don't know if you dealt with this at all, with not looking at the screen while I'm talking to the camera.
Right. Yeah.
And so, cause I'll just look at myself and then I'll forget, oh, no, I need to look at the lens, not the screen right above it. And so I got to keep reminding myself. Sometimes I'll even flip the camera down once I see that I got the shot set. And one of the things I like about Canon, and now the iPhones do this automatically too, or, any Android device, is the autofocus is really good. That was one of the things that Think Media had recommended in this camera, is their auto, like, people like me, like I'm not a camera guy, like I need something that's really easy where I can turn it on and hit record, and know it's going to be in focus. And then, I've got editors that will edit the video for me, so I don't get into that side of it. So I can just hit record, and then I just hit upload to Google Drive, and that's all I got to do to capture video.
I guess kind of a good beginning, use your phone, lapel mic. Next step up, get a camera, plug in. And then, yes, and then you said sometimes you use your computer with a teleprompter.
Yeah, so it's honestly, I bought this teleprompter during the pandemic because I'm on Zoom, especially during that season, 5-6 hours a day, and so I was like, I'd like to have a better Zoom experience, and so I YouTubed how to create a teleprompter so you can do eye contact while you're Zooming. And so, so right now I'm using a teleprompter even for this recording, where it, so that it looks, so basically my webcam is right behind the teleprompter, and I just use the teleprompter monitor almost like a second screen. And it allows me to do Zoom calls where I'm looking right at the person rather than looking, at their forehead or their chin on those calls. And so it's and if, you could just YouTube the whatever Amazon links that I used back then are probably changed since,
Yeah.
but it's probably $150 to get the little teleprompter. And I just used the same webcam that I used to have on top of my monitor, and just connected it to the back. I've actually tried probably 4 different webcams, trying to find the best webcam, and I keep going back to the Logitech, whatever the base like $50 Logitech is just what works. Well, it's not the highest quality, so it's not even 4K. It's like 720p or something like that. But it has autofocus and it always works. And so I've probably spent $500 on webcams trying to find a better webcam, and I keep coming back to this one webcam just because it works with all the software. It's I've had no problems with it. So
I guess
I'm a big fan of Logitech.
The downside of using like a Canon, like a camera for these videos is, you can't just, on your phone, it's like, few buttons, you're good. You have to upload it, then you have to edit it. So I guess there's a little bit more work on that end.
Yeah, I tried that initially. I used my Canon as a webcam, but it would sometimes auto shut off. It would, I just had some issues with that it wasn't set up. Now they've created some software that resolves that now. But when I was doing this during the pandemic, I had those issues, and I just have never gone back to try. And then I don't want to, when I'm shooting other videos, I don't want to take it off of the teleprompter and deal with that hassle. So it's more of a lazy factor than a best practice. Yeah. But it's always like, how can I make this as easy as possible to do good Zoom calls, to do, easy podcast and have a good setup. And so, it's the USB microphones, I think, are the biggest game changer. A lot of people obsess over the cameras. And even when you're doing talking head videos, you want it to look good. But the key is, like, I see plenty of videos where it's like these people look great, but you don't hear them very well. And it's like getting good audio is by far the most important part. And I think we just over prioritize the video side of it when the audio is the biggest opportunity we have to get better engagement with our content.
Yeah. And speaking of, the more beginner version, I've been using some iPhone tools. Like there's an app. I mean, you got to pay for these things, but I have an app that's a teleprompter. So because the Best Minute newsletter that I've written it for like 3.5 years, so there's so much stuff there. And so what I now do is I take that and then I put it in the teleprompter app. I don't know. I think it's called Big View is the one I use. Although
I tested Big View.
And that way I can like use my phone and make sure I say what I want to say. And then all these things cost money. I think it's called, let me pull it up. The one I started using recently, it's called Mojo. I use that for captions.
Yeah, nice.
Big View has captions because it's like a teleprompter and captions. And they're awful. Huh. Like, they don't give you many options, and the big reason they're awful is they're delayed. It's like half a second delayed. I'm like, this should be like, you should be an all-in-one. Yes. So I started using another app that's like the captions are actually fast. Like and there's a lot of stuff, and so that's what I've been doing. But use the apps. For sure. And so
I hear Descript a whole lot. I've not used Descript, but I hear a lot of people that use Descript for both teleprompter and captioning. But there's so many good tools out there that are coming out all the time. But it is what I think it's a good point you bring up is that a lot of people ask me why does everybody put text captions over their video? And for whatever reason, it's been proven out that like people's engagement increases significantly with that text overlay. So taking the time to run it through an app that does captions over, because people will say, well, people can turn on captions if they want. Well, it's like whether people say they want them or not, or think they want them or not, they engage better when you add them. And so it just, for whatever reason, that's the trend that it works. I'm very surprised that some people that I follow that do a lot of talking head content and they don't have any captions. I'm like, because sometimes you're listening, your phone's off. The volume's off, and you're sweeping through stories or reels. And you can sometimes you can't always tell. Even it's not great, but even the native like Instagram captions, I'm like, at least use that. But to have no captions, I'm like, you're missing. You're missing out. It's a huge miss.
Yeah, always use captions. Now, you talked about how you mentioned a small apartment on an office. I want to talk a little bit about where you live, and then I want to ask how that works with your current job. You live in a not inexpensive city, which you love it.
That is an understatement.
Where are you talking to me from right now?
Yeah, so we live in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. So Brooklyn, New York City. We've lived in New York about 10 years. And so we lived in the Upper East Side the majority of the time. It's been about 5 years. The pandemic, we moved to a new neighborhood. called Roosevelt Island. We're actually one of the ministers I work with. This guy named Tim Keller, who passed away a couple of years ago. But we lived in the building right next door to him.
Oh, wow.
And so
Did you ever see him?
I did. Well, I say that I saw him because I worked with him, but I never actually saw him while we lived there, mostly because he was fighting cancer at that time, so he wasn't going out much. But he's a big guy, tall guy, and another bald man. And so I was trying to find the other bald white guy on Roosevelt Island. But yeah, he was the legend though of Roosevelt Island of that neighborhood. We just moved. We started in Brooklyn in another neighborhood called Park Slope, but now we're in a neighborhood called Greenpoint, and love the city. My wife, I would say I like the city. My wife like lives and breathes New York City and loves it here, and our communities here, and so it's all our kids know.
You went from the Texas area to New York City, and then back to Texas, and then back to New York City.
Yeah.
So like you're all in.
And I'm afraid they're going to take my Texas passport away from me. But I'm a Texas sports guy. I went to college in Texas, and 10 years ago, my wife, after our second kid, was like, I need to live in New York. And I'm like, but we have a house on a cul-de-sac, and we've got great jobs, and we just did it, and I was like, I'll get it out of her. Moved there for 2 years, get it out of her system. Tried to move her back to Texas. We moved to Dallas, and 6 weeks in, she's like, I got to get back. And I was like, you know what? We just fit in New York. Our friend, like we just had, even in 2 years, developed a really meaningful community, and the city just fits us for whatever. We're some of the weird people that and we had, even when we moved there, our first apartment, it was probably, we had built a custom house on a cul-de-sac in San Antonio, Texas, 3,000 square, I don't know, 2,800 square feet or something, to about a 600 square foot 2-bedroom apartment, but wasn't even big enough. Like our kids had to bunk their beds because you couldn't have even put 2 twin beds in the same room. And we basically, our whole bedroom was our, queen size bed, and that's it. Like no dresser, no anything. And I remember we only had one drawer in the apartment in the kitchen, and we had to, we tried to put the silverware tray in it, and it didn't even fit. And we're like, what are we doing? And then we had to choose two. In the kitchen, there was only so much countertop space. Yeah. We had to choose, do we want a microwave or a coffee pot? And I'm a coffee guy. Like I was like, the microwave has to go. I've got to have my coffee. And I'm not paying the, coffee shop every day, for coffee. And so we survived. And it was probably $1,000 a month more than our house in the 600 square. It was a 4th floor walk up, but it was beautiful. We had mice that lived with us, and we got to know our neighbors, and it was a tremendous experience. And then, my wife just found herself, I think here, and so it's been a journey. It's been hard at times, a lot of times, especially during the pandemic, and it is. The expenses are more than I think I could have ever anticipated, even though it's like we tried to keep the same living expenses because we didn't need cars when we got here, and so we're able to cut some costs. But the reality is a box of cereal here is like $7. I remember getting here like I can't even get the cheap cereal here, right. And so you figure it out. Taxes are more. It's a lot, but it's. It's also the incredible diversity. Our kids, like the friends they have, the worlds they're from, the food, the culture, the entertainment, there's just so much that happens here. With like this afternoon, I actually was we were supposed to go to the Met. Like it was just one of those things, and it got canceled. But it's like, we're just gonna go to the Met on a Wednesday afternoon because we can't. And so there's some incredible opportunities being here, but man, it's some tough challenges too.
So I'm willing to all your socials in the show notes, because you post some things you like, things to enjoy about New York City. So if anyone's going to visit, you want to check out Nils Smith and see what he talks about it. I'm curious, obviously the cost. So other than the cost, you obviously love living in New York City. Like, what's a terrible thing about living in New York City?
Oh, a terrible thing. I mean, the cost is the first thing that comes to mind. I think, there's a side where, it's well, and we're coming out of the summer right now, so the
Yeah.
primary form of transportation here is the subway. And in the middle of the summer, I think when you're in places, and I grew up in Texas, like I remember I had no AC in my first car in
Mm.
Texas, and it was okay. And it was 100 degrees, all summer. But primarily when it's hot, you just stay in the air conditioning or get in the pool, and you're okay. Well, here you have to go outside. You
Yeah.
have to walk to the subway. You have to get on the subway, and the subway during the summer, everyone smells. Everyone's sweating. It's hot, and so I just think about like the subway in the summer is like just one of the worst things, and everyone's raising their arm to hold the bar,
Yeah.
and so you got stinky people holding up their arms, and so yeah, it's that's the first thing that comes to
What
mind.
what is the craziest thing you've ever seen on the subway? Like
Ooh,
personally?
I don't know if I could say it on a podcast.
Really?
But, I do, yeah, I mean, just a lot of profanity, or just you get a
Yeah.
lot of, schizophrenia, and it's
Mm.
it's interesting, the people. I remember when he got here, and I'm like, there's people talking on their phones in the subway. That's kind of obnoxious. Then I'm like, oh wait, there's no phone service in here. They're just
Yeah.
talking to themselves.
Mhm.
And a lot of, when you think about like when we moved here, our youngest daughter was 2. And so they for sure knew the F word by 3, and so they just, you hear, stuff, all the time here. I do remember during the probably coming out of the pandemic, and they legalized marijuana here, but a guy just in the middle of the full subway car, just decides he's going to light a joint, on the subway, like sitting right across from me, and nobody says anything to him. He just lights a joint and just hot
Yeah.
boxes the whole subway car for us. And it was just one of those things that it's like, I guess, I mean, no, never, no, nobody should ever smoke on a subway car. That's not legal. But it was like one of those, like, wow, you wouldn't see that in Texas.
Yeah.
And so that was an interesting. But I've definitely seen some like arguments. Like people are
Yeah.
just boisterous here. Yeah, but they're. I mean, there's been some other things that I just don't think I could share, that are a little more crude. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's. But I will say the other side is some people think it's dangerous, or
Mhm.
and one of the things I've just been. It's nice to even see my kids like adapting, of like they know when somebody's talking to themselves, like they're not dangerous, but they're also not like you
Mhm.
keep a distance, and
Yeah.
there's some aspects, but the subway's safe, like, so while it might stink, I don't. There's very few times. I mean, I'm not going to go on it at 2 a.m, but
Yeah.
I'm also not staying awake till 2 a.m anymore. I'm
Right.
44 years old, and so it's, I think it's safe, and you can get around and you just see all kinds. I think the other cool thing is you'll see like a rich Wall Street guy sitting next to a homeless guy, sitting next to a Hasidic Jew, and just living together,
Yeah.
and. I think it's part of the beauty of New York City and the melting pot that is this city, and
Yeah.
the cultures colliding, and getting along, for the
Yeah.
most part.
And I think too, I mean, you guys, I could be wrong on this. I think, relatively speaking, it's probably pretty rare to have somebody who's not from the New York City area, like move a family to live in New York City,
Yeah,
with cost, whatever. Especially, I'm just curious with like Amplify Social, what you do.
yeah,
I mean, you don't have to be in New York City.
no,
So you've
no,
chosen an expensive place to live to do something that you could do anywhere and
yeah,
raise a family. I mean, there's got to be some challenges,
yeah.
doing that in New York.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot of challenges. And it's not always, I mean, it definitely doesn't make sense. I mean, I would say, for us, there are God reasons. Like we just
Mm.
felt like God was leading our family here. And connected us here. And there's a side of people that come to New York City that I keep I keep 3 signs up here in my office. One is the Great Commandment, one's the Great Commission, and one is the Steve Jobs quote that says the only people crazy enough to change the world, or the only people that will change the world are the ones that are crazy enough to think they can.
Yeah.
And there's some of us that's part of the draw, I think, to New York City for a lot of people, of like, these are people that like want to change the world, that want to, like, even the homeless people are more entrepreneurial than anywhere else. Like they're just really like creative in how they, ask for money. And so there's just a wiring, I think, to the crazy people that are often drawn to this city. And I think it's part of where we have found, that like-mindedness. with some of those people. And so it doesn't make sense. It doesn't help my business. I've got to pay more taxes on my business and personally to live here. The school system, our kids are in public school most of the time. We actually transitioned to homeschooling this last year, was incredible. We had some challenges that were issues, but for the most part, they both did like concerts in Carnegie Hall, like that. Wow. They were playing their recorder in. They went to Broadway shows as like field trips, and went to Natural History Museum for their, so they got some really unique experiences being in the public school system here. But they, so there's been some really incredible opportunities, and there's been some really unique challenges. And so we, I think we have, in some ways, we almost played it year by year. And then, probably a few years back, we just kind of said, look, until our kids are graduated, this is where they're rooted. That's all they know, like they can't imagine being anywhere else. And so, yeah, it's, you kind of find your flow and you kind of, figure it out, but it's, we still live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment with a family of 4 and a little dog.
Do you have a microwave?
We've got a microwave, and we've got the ultimate New York City luxury now, in that we have a washer dryer in unit, which we hadn't had in like 8 years. And so we are living the good life. We actually won the housing lottery, which is like a whole complex thing. Wow. But we have stabilized rent. And so we got into a great unit that, it's not affordable in anybody else's standards. It's more than our mortgage ever was. But we have what we perceive to be kind of our forever home here in New York. Wow. And really trying to dig roots into our neighborhood and community. And what ends up happening in New York City neighborhoods is you can walk everywhere. We've got some just incredible restaurants and bodegas and just places around the neighborhood. And we just are trying to get to know, the business owners and the community in our neighborhood, and just be citizens, in this little, probably mile by 1 mile, area of Greenpoint, Brooklyn. Yeah. And so we're really, it's kind of known for its tattoo shops, and an art, kind of a more of an art district, which is not the way we're, I have 0 tattoos. My wife has 2. And we don't smoke weed. And so we don't necessarily fit the general dynamic of the neighborhood, but we're really trying to get to know our neighbors and just be, kind of good residents and friendly neighbors, here in the community.
That's great. All right. Politics and social media. I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this so I get it right. For those that are, on X, Twitter, obviously Elon Musk bought them, I don't know how long ago, a year ago, maybe more.
Yeah, about a year ago. So.
Made a bunch of changes, laid off a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
And it's not the politics that I necessarily interested about, but it has to do with it. Like, a lot of people he's been getting a lot of flack because he has been outspoken more towards the Republican conservative side.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the media world are more left-leaning Democrat. And so I want to talk about like leaving the platform and it's so bad. Interestingly enough, the metrics of like growth and usage have all gone up since he made all these changes.
Yep.
And so to me, it felt like a lot of the criticism was because of his politics and because he was so unique and no one else will do it. In your opinion, how much of like the pushback flack Twitter X gets is because of his platform changes or his politics? Like what? I don't know. What do you make of all that?
That's a great question. I think, I think in general, what, Elon. So I've got a lot of opinions on Elon and on X, and I think it's a great kind of perfect storm of him taking over. One thing about Elon is he doesn't lose. The guy started PayPal. He's putting spaceships, like in this space, and he's like bringing internet to the world, and he's digging holes underground, and and at the end of the day, a social media platform, probably the easiest thing he's ever done from an entrepreneurial standpoint. His cars are driving themselves. It's unbelievable. And so it's like the guy just figures out how to make things work. Now that said, he's also a crazy loose cannon, on social media. And he often even says like, I can't believe people have other people do social media for them. You should just do it like me and do it yourself. And I'm like, maybe you shouldn't always do it yourself. I think though he's also like one of the beautiful things about how he's built his business with Tesla. Tesla doesn't have to do any marketing because they have Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the marketing for all of these companies. And so look, I think at the end of the day, he's for sure going to get the technology right. What I don't love is that it because he is the lead voice of the platform, it isn't inviting it feels like it's disinviting other voices. Now the reality is because the general media is almost all very liberal, it's almost creates a place for more conservative from a political standpoint. The other reality though is I feel like the other two big buckets of X is entertainment and sports. And so and the other thing I use it for is a lot of times I'm still into crypto and that world. So it's a big platform for kind of crypto and Web3 type of conversations. But it is I think he's gonna figure it out and make it work. I think he's also probably not as conservative as a lot of people perceive him to be. But he did just endorse Trump, and he's definitely gone more conservative. But some of the things he says though, like I just think about like as running a social media marketing company, it's like if I were advising him, I would advise him not to at least have one person review everything before he pushes post, because he is the voice and face, and he got in trouble for years back for smoking weed on Joe Rogan. It's like think about some of these choices before you put it out there. Like this 90% of what you say isn't bad, but that 10% is what people remember. Yeah. And I would not advise him to go the path he's gone, but he's finding plenty of success without my advice. So
for all of us who are not the richest man in the world, we probably need to be a little bit more smart about what we say.
Yes.
It's interesting. I'm not pro or anti Elon. I really don't have an opinion on him.
Yeah.
But I find interesting is like the stuff he does works. Like it's like all the flack he's getting. I know, like to your point, he said he has voted Democrat.
Yeah.
Now he's for the first time in a long time.
Right.
But like literally today, I read an article on X about the Navy using what's his internet? I forget what his internet's called.
Yeah, Starlink
on their ship.
Yeah.
And it was like how like the morale was boosted, how fast it was, and it's like the government isn't doing this.
No,
it's private companies. The government, like what was the millions of dollars they said they were going to build chargers across the United States? They built 8. Yeah, like electric car chargers.
Right.
Like he's the one, like SpaceX, like NASA, whatever.
He
he's
just
the one going to
figures
take
it
us
out.
to space.
Like
this private guy is like, you don't like politics, but it's actually, I think 120 years from now, they're going to look back and be like Albert Einstein levels of like the innovation that he did.
Yes.
And I will say, I like X a lot because I'm a sports guy. Yeah. Like when news happens, everybody goes to X.
Yeah.
The community notes.
Yes.
I'm like, it's the only platform.
Yes. And I think to his point, while he is personally more conservative, he just did the interview with Trump on the platform, and he has said, Kamala, you've got an open platform here. Yeah. I'll interview you too. It's not like he's suppressing other voices. And I see plenty of people on all sides using it, and so it definitely isn't a one-way conversation. It's just not where the majority of the media is more left-leaning. This one is leaning more right, I think, a lot because of Elon, but I don't think it's becoming like, okay, Instagram's going to be the left platform and X is going to be the right. I think he's going to guide it in a path of, at the end of the day, it should be more agnostic as a platform, and just have very transparent algorithms as to what is. And I think it's proven too that a lot of things were suppressed in the past that were done by humans, controlling the algorithm a bit. And so I like that. I think he's actually bringing, even though he's brought the company private, he's bringing more transparency than I think it's ever been on any other social media platform. Yeah. So I want to see X succeed under Elon. We definitely see engagement happening, but I think he's also, I think what's hurting his business that he just doesn't factor in is, look, these businesses succeed because of advertising. And he's got to attract advertisers for the business to work. and I think he's got to figure that out. And time will tell, if he does. The good news is seems to have plenty of money, and so he could buy himself a little time while he figures that out. But it's so fascinating the fact that Elon Musk just bought Twitter is just who would have predicted that in the past. And so it's an interesting day.
Yeah, but like I said, I love the community notes when people post things that are incorrect.
Yes,
I think that's awesome.
Even on his have got community notes on them.
Yeah. And I think to your point too as well, while maybe some of the leaders of these other social platforms are left leaning, I think one of the differences between Musk is he's very vocal about posting out his platform, where some of these people aren't, is like maybe, for lack of a word, in your face about it, or maybe it comes across that way. Yeah. So I do see how that can feel divisive. I'm curious for you, as we kind of get closer to the end here. Obviously, Nils Smith, and we'll link to all your socials. Who else will you recommend people follow that you've maybe learned from when it comes to online and engagement, all that?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll tell you, a couple people that I would just recommend following. There's and this has nothing to do with online, but Pastor Rich Viotis, who's here in New York. He's not my pastor. He's just a friend of mine. He is fantastic on social media. So he kind of comes to mind. I've always tell people, like, if you're not following him, like, I feel like I get my spiritual feeding from Rich. But when it comes to social media, especially when serving churches, as I do a lot of ministry work again, and Brady Shearer I learn a ton from him, and he just puts out great content. Gary Vaynerchuk is who I often probably steal the most from. I often say that I try to, Gary cusses a lot, and so because I'm bringing this content to Christians and ministries, I'm like, I just take out the curse words and communicate it in a nicer way, where he sometimes can come across a little angrier. But Gary V is great. A guy named Seth Godin. I was actually just reading through one of his books recently. He's great, just great marketer. So that those are some of the guys that kind of are top of mind of who I follow and learn from.
Yeah. Also curious, maybe on the hardware side, we've talked a lot of software here. Maybe gadgets. Like, what kind of any gadgets you like, recommend? Headphones, whatever, watches.
Yeah, I don't think I have one turned on in my office, but I love Alexa over Google Home.
Okay.
So we are fully Alexifying our house, where we've got like the electric blinds and the TVs and the nice. Lights all connected to Alexa. And so I think those devices are just becoming a big part of our world online. They're so cheap. I did just buy on Prime Day. This is, it's not a good gadget to help you do anything other than have fun, but I bought an electric scooter, for like $200 on Prime Day. And I'm like, how good could this be? And I'm, almost 300 pounds. I'm a big guy. And I'm like, can this thing even carry me? That's when I started. My office is about half a mile from my apartment.
It doesn't get stolen?
Well, I have a lock that I can lock it up, but I have a bike room here at my office, and I've got I just keep it in my living room at home, which my wife doesn't love. But my kids are using it more than I'm using it now. But it's 20 pounds. I can just easily fold it up and even put it under the bed if I want to. But I'm having fun on those have just gotten so cheap that I'm like, man, if I had this as a kid, I'd be, so lazy. I'm just like, I wouldn't walk anywhere. Yeah. So that's probably the new gadget. At the end of the day, this is where the iPhone is just so amazing. Yeah. Is we can do everything with this one device that I'm like, I don't need other devices. I will say this is probably the other thing is I switched to the Echo Buds for my headphones. They were like $30 on Prime Day. I bought like 3 pairs in case they ever go out because they were so cheap. I like them better than iPhones. Or not iPhones, AirPods. Yep. I just think they fit better in my ear, and they don't sound as good, but I feel like they talk better on phone calls too. And I don't listen to music. I'm a podcast audiobook guy. Yeah. So these are probably the newest device that I'm messing with. But yeah, there's really not any. I love toys. I mean, I love hardware, gadget stuff, but right now I feel like everything is apps within my phone that's adding more just productivity to my life.
Any social media hot takes for us?
Well, I would say my hot take is that I I do legitimately believe TikTok will get shut down in the
Okay.
US. And so I will be disappointed by that because it's one of my favorite platforms. But I as I look to where it is and where things are and kind of where the government is, I don't see a resolution coming. I think TikTok will be shut down. So that's my hot take.
All right. And last but not least, Nils, when are you going to space?
Good. As soon as possible, is my answer. And Elon's going to take me there.
Okay.
I am convinced, that in my lifetime, I will go to space. Now I fly a lot for work, but I had to really overcome a fear of flying. I'm not a roller coaster rider, but I feel like space is one of those things that just wasn't possible when I was a child and is possible today. Now it cost $250,000 to go, so I'm not going anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I do believe in my lifetime, I'll be able to pay 10 grand and go to space for 15 minutes or something,
Right.
and experience anti-gravity. So I think in my lifetime, and I say that like I'm 44, so I think probably by the time I'm 70, I think I will have flown to space. So that's my prediction.
All right.
But would you go?
My wife would probably prohibit me going more than anything
Okay.
else. There'd have to be a
Okay.
lot of safe launches and returns
Yeah.
before she would let me try it. But I personally would be interested in it. Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And this is what I was telling my kids started flying more. We actually, our kids are 12 and 15. They started flying on their own for the first time. Which is interesting, just like independence,
Yeah.
that they've developed. But they, our youngest has a bit of a fear of flying. And I just said, look, you don't hesitate to get in the car, and the airplane is safer than the car.
Yeah.
And when it just comes to just percentage of crashes in airplanes versus cars, and I think space is going to be the same thing. I think they're just going to get so much better that, and I figure like when I'm 70, like if I go, I go, like, and if there's a way to go, it's in space travel, at 70.
That's great.
We'll see. But my wife would not allow me to go right now.
right.
And she definitely would not trust Elon or Bezos to take me there right now.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's great. Well, Nils, it's been helpful. As we end, maybe talk a little bit about what you do with Amplify Social and where people can find you online.
Yeah. So we run a social media marketing agency. So we just do social media for people that need help doing it and need a hand. So if you want to find me online, it's Nils Smith ever. So you just Google me but it's Nils, Nils. My mom always says it's Hills, Thrills, Pills, Nils. And I'm like, all the other things, Mom, have 2 L's. If you would have given me 2 L's, it would have helped people say my name right. But, so it's like Hills, Thrills, Pills, but with 1 L. So Nils, Smith. And I'm on all the socials, and my DMs are always open. And I love connecting with people and engaging with folks.
Yeah, so if you want to get better at social media or learn about New York City or both, make sure you check out Nils. Nils, thanks so much. It's been a really awesome conversation.
Thanks for having me.